Ladies and gentlemen, as we prepare for the service this morning, please take a few moments to silence your cell phones. Thank you.
It's good that we are here together. More accurately, perhaps it is appropriate that we gather here to celebrate the life of Mary Harrison. I'm especially grateful to be able to be with this family, Roland and Mary Harrison's family, a couple who were so long and loyal, devoted members, if infrequent attendees, of this, their dear congregation. Even in these, her latest years, when Mary had no ability, never mind the inclination to attend services, Mary remained loyal after all, and after so many years, she did not turn away. She knew the leaders of this congregation, and she knew the rabbis, and I'm told Mary's family from Hamburg knew Irene Jacobs' family from Hamburg. And Mary so cherished her lifelong allegiance to Rodef Shalom. And to have you welcome me back to this pulpit, which I stood for nearly 20 years as your family's rabbi, which I proudly continue to be, is now both part of Rodef Shalom and Ohav Shalom's temple families. It is good that on this day, if only for this purpose, we have all returned home. We do so, we gather here in this sacred space to recall and to honor the remarkable life of Mary Harrison, a woman of deep reservoirs of resilience, a quiet strength and sometimes not so quiet, an insatiable curiosity, and for the world, a deep generosity, and for her family, an unwavering love. In coming together to remember and to celebrate the life of this remarkable woman, we are not here to share a life's biography, nor CV, nor tell-all or memoir. Rather, we have come to begin a conversation. We are here to identify those parts of a person's personality, those qualities of character that serve to define a woman, a mother, a grandmother, a great-grandmother, a mother-in-law, an aunt, a friend, such that we secure her for blessing in our memory. Mary's story begins in Germany, where she was born some 95 years ago in 1929. The first decade of her life made for a happy childhood. And then at just 10 years of age, with her mother Tola and older sister Lily, she fled her homeland, narrowly escaping the growing threat of the Holocaust. Mary and Lily's father, Robert, had come to the United States a year earlier with the foresight and courage. Think how intrepid that decision to come to these states surely was, in order to make a path in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, for his family. Mary landed in this city in 1939, a refugee in every sense of the word. At the tender age of 10, Mary Abrahamson of Hamburg, now in the United States, Mary Amson, left behind the only home she had ever known. And though with her family, Mary built a new life here in America, the trauma of being uprooted, of leaving under the fear for her life and the lives of those she loved, never fully left her. That sense of dislocation, of being far from home, and perhaps a healthy dose of survivor's guilt, profoundly shaped Mary in ways deeply personal that were by turns both subtle and could be severe. But for certain, the most formative experiences Mary had in her youth instilled within her a lifelong love for her native land, the relations of her family, as well as an empathy for those on the margins who might otherwise be overlooked or forgotten. And all of this served to provide her with a fierce determination to create a family and a home of her own that was filled with devotion and defined by loyalty and love. And then only a few years later, Mary suffered a second heartbreak when her older sister Lily passed away at just 25 years of age. At the time, she was a young wife and mother, Lily was, and was taken from the family too soon. Mary truly never got over that loss either. The sadness of losing her older sister stayed with her for all of her years, even as she consistently focused her sights and her heart on others, raising her 3 children, Ross and Lee and Leslie, caring for her nephew Gary as one of her own, and later delighting in her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. In loving her own family so fully, Mary honored her parents, Robert and Tola, as well as her sister Lily's memory every single day, just as all gathered here on this day shall surely honor Mary's memory by being as good and as generous, as connected and as loving as was Mary. And 2, we can be as good and generous as we each can be as we go forward into the rest of our lives. May we follow her example. Mary was throughout her life bright and curious. Her instincts were those of generosity and goodness, and she valued most her connections through faith and family that were traditions and therefore timeless. Mary was ever curious. She read widely, asked questions endlessly, and traveled the world with open eyes and heart. She believed deeply in learning, not just in formal settings, but in the unfolding of life, that which could be discovered in each conversation and every new landscape, within every book and person, experience, and encounter. Mary's desire to understand never dimmed. We must also point out that she was a nonconformist. In the best sense of the word, she had her own way of seeing the world and was not shy about sharing it. Mary was a woman of deep opinions, born of convictions, and also delightfully, she was a jokester. Her sense of humor, often unexpected, was part of what made her perspective so compelling, and her person, to coin a phrase, perhaps so exasperatingly endearing. And because we are here to remember Mary as she truly was, we acknowledge her complex personality. For all of her love and generosity, and those who knew and loved her best can attest, there were times when she was difficult, simply not always easy to be with, and indeed there were times when her convictions, opinions, and expectations, and her decision to share her thinking caused strain, perhaps even heartbreak, both in relationship with friends as well as with family. The tensions were real and often left a mark. But challenging though it may be, today we recall Mary's story as one of enduring love. She was loyal and she was loving at her core, and goodness was an innate part of her neshama, her soul. People returned her love and loyalty. They stuck by her. You all stuck by her. You hung in there through good times and challenging times because of her innate goodness, her generosity, her humanity, and her loving heart. Because you understood that always Mary's heart was in the right place and never did her loyalty or love ever waver. And though not always simple, Mary Harrison's love for family and friends was deep, profound, and true. My friends, to speak respectfully yet honestly in retrospect is not in any way to diminish a person. Indeed, it is, I suggest to you, a way of honoring her. For the woman whose life we gathered to recall and to celebrate this day was human in full, curious and complicated, determined and devoted, a link to an earlier time and the tether upon which is founded your future. And to remember our dear Mary fully is to hold that complexity with compassion, and it is to remember her for the fullness of her person, and it is to do so for blessing. And so let us speak of Mary's greatest blessing, that of her family. On this day, we recall Mary as a loving mother to Ross and Manaz, to Lee and Cindy, to Leslie and Greg, and she was a second mother to her nephew Gary and to Krista. Mary was a wise and wonderful grandmother, a dear Omi, to Arash and Ashley, Jason and Amy, to Samantha, Hermine and Martin, Harrison and Nicole and Dylan, Jonathan, Tara, and Rachel. How am I doing? And in her later years, she treasured being a great-grandmother to Shane and Landon, Addison, Annie, Levy, Amson, and Lulu. Mary's intellect and curiosity, her goodness and her generosity, as well as her loyalty and love of family, these were innate. After all, these are not qualities of character that one acquires or comes by late in life. These are the essential parts of one's personality. These are the qualities that radiated from Mary throughout her life. She was herself a life force and somehow cast a light such that people were drawn to her most of the time. As I've intimated, Mary could at times push people away, but mostly they were drawn to her. It was certainly true of Roland Harrison. They were young when they met, quite young, and together they made a life and built a family, established a legacy, and together they grew old. Mary and Roland were blessed to have been married for nearly 60 years, and though Roland predeceased her more than 20 years ago, and these years alone were difficult and challenging, we recall theirs as a loving and fortunate partnership wherein the intrinsic personalities, each their own, balanced one another beautifully. The Harrison home was filled with books and music, love and laughter and deep affection. And Mary and Roland built a life that was generous in spirit, rich in meaning, and their lives were blessed. And so too were the lives of those who knew their love, also blessed, the members of this family most significantly. But so too many who are here and many more who are not with us this day, more than we will ever know. And we all now have the fortune of memory. We say, Baruch Dayan Ha'amet, for her life, thanks be to the source of life. Now, perhaps it sounds odd to offer a blessing in that way. After all, it is no secret and no shanda that Mary was not, by definition, religious. But though Mary may have rarely been seen in the sanctuary, her devotion to Reform Judaism ran deep. And though she eschewed formal observance, she never shirked Jewish responsibilities nor denied her identity. And she was a lifelong, profoundly loyal Jew to her faith tradition of her birth, proud of her Jewish heritage, deeply committed to Jewish culture, and moved by the power of memory. She sent her children to religious school here at Rodef Shalom, though how often the three of you attended classes is unknown. She hosted Passover Seders with care and meaning and passed down family stories. She maintained her affiliation with this once overflowing congregation, even as her own presence in this building was admittedly infrequent. To Mary, as was true for so many of us, Rodef Shalom was never simply a building. It was our spiritual home, a symbol of Jewish continuity, and a connection to something larger than oneself. Mary cherished Rodef Shalom not only for its beauty and its history, but for the voice it gave to generations of Jews like herself, especially through the beloved book reviews and teachings of Solomon Freehoff and later Walter Jacob, which nourished both her intellect as well as her spirit, and the friendship she once savored within this congregational body. And she was always clear and unwavering and deliberate in her wish that her funeral, which she helped to choreograph, be held here, in this storied sanctuary. It mattered to her, as did her obituary, which I understand she had a hand in drafting, as did she for the guest list today, which she helped to oversee, ensuring that what she wanted and those whom she wanted to be here most would be. It was part of the way Mary moved in the world and in the arc of time. We are fortunate to be able to hear from a few who knew and loved Mary most. We begin with her son Ross, and thereafter Lee, and then granddaughter Hermine, caregiver Pat, and David Brown.
Thank you, Rabbi Bisno, and thank you. I mean, this is a testimony really to her life that you're all here today, because you all meant something to her, and I know she meant something to you. To sum up a life of almost a century is very, very difficult. I think one of the advantages of doing this as a 71-year-old is hopefully I can try to represent how Mary presented herself in the world, what baggage she came with, what her life spirit was, what her hurt was, what her pain was, rather than looking at it through the perspective of a son with my own baggage and my own hurt and my own pain. Today is a day to represent what Mary was, and I'm going to do my best to do that to all of you. Our mom was shaped by war, as Rabbi Bisno implied, World War II in specific. And I think the best prism for representing Mary is to talk about what she lost and what she gained as a result of war. What did she lose? She lost her country. I mean, it's no secret that German Jews, in many cases, were more German than Jewish. And that certainly was the case with my mother as a child. It was the case with her father. Her father fought in the First World War, and to this day, my grandfather was awarded the Iron Cross in the First World War, and that was proudly displayed in my mother's home. So she lost her identity. She lost her country. And she was branded a Jew. She was Jewish by birth, and she attended synagogue in Hamburg, Germany, but she was branded a Jew on her passport, a J. She was no longer German, so she lost her country and her German identity. And when she came to the United States, ironically, she was branded a German because an alien, an enemy, no one recognized her as a Jewish refugee. They recognized her in school as a young 10-year-old as a German. And that left a scar. So she was denied her German identity in Germany and branded a Jew. In the United States, she wasn't branded a Jew. She was branded a German with a negative connotation. Imagine what that does to the psyche of a 10-year-old child. And that stayed with her forever. She lost her home. And one of the things that my brother and my sister and I and all the entire family are proud of is that we were able to honor her wish to not lose her home again. She wanted to remain in her home. And I have to say that in this congregation right now are sitting 4 very special people. Pat, Shayla, Nay, we call her Nay D. Duan, and Lucy, who made that possible. They didn't provide care. They didn't provide just care. They provided love. And my understanding was that love was returned. But we will always feel a special bond to those that enabled her not to lose a second home. So she lost her country. She also lost her aunt. You know, when you hear about the Holocaust and you hear about 6 million being lost, that's tragic, but it's an abstraction, right? For her, she lost, aside from her home, she lost one individual, Tante Zala. Tante Zala, when provided my mother solace and care and attention when my grandmother probably could not, because her husband had left Germany a year before. We found yesterday was August 1938. My mother and her sister came in July of 1939. So Tante Zala was almost like a surrogate mother to our mother. And she never forgot that. She said, I lost Tante Zala. And Tante Zala was not as lucky as my mother. Her husband also left Germany and for England, and Tante Zala was murdered in Lodz. She was deported back to Poland and murdered. So she lost that. She lost her name, something we never really understood until the last maybe year. Her name was Abrahamson, a Jewish name, and that name was shortened to Amson, and Arash and Ashley, our lovely son and daughter-in-law, lovingly named our grandson Amson. Slightly different spelling, to a different letter, but lovely, in memory of my mother. But my mother embraced that, but she also recognized that she lost her name and her identity. So I think that she lost a lot, but she also gained a lot as a result of the war. She gained a loving and long marriage, as Rabbi Bisno mentioned. She gained our family. She gained she had a life force with my father in a partnership, which she was able to advance an incredible family, and many in this room remember that and were part of it. And that is a very, very beautiful thing. Her grandkids, her great-grandkids, the mates, she spawned a new life, and that's what she gained in this country. We don't know what her life would have been like in Germany. That's a counterfactual, but we know that when she came here, she built upon the hurt, that what she lost, she built again. She had the ability to, I think the fact that she believed, since she lost her German identity in Germany and regained a German identity in a negative context here, I think she lost her religion too. I think she never really forgave her Judaism for having lost her country. And that was her ambivalent, her strong connection to Judaism, but also her ambivalence. But I think the fact that she was able to in some way reconnect with Judaism, not necessarily spiritually, but institutionally, and impart that on us in terms of the rituals that our parents had, and the fact that she was able to combine that with a reconnection to Germany, something that we all gained from, was incredible. The fact that we are now able to reconnect with her homeland is something that is very meaningful to all of us that have connected with that. The other thing that she gained was an understanding. She was unseen. She was unseen. Our father saw her. She felt unseen by many, having lost her country, lost her identity, lost her religion, then lost her Germanness. So what she was able to give back was she saw the unseen. And we saw that many, many times. Several people in this here, right here, Barbara Ann, she saw individuals, and was able to see them and build them up and help build them. She did it at Camp Deer Creek. So she took the pain that she experienced of what she lost, and she was able to give that to others. So, who was Mary? I think she was a series of contradictions in a way. I do believe that if you take the loss and what she gained, I think over the entire spectrum of her life, what she gained overshadowed what she lost. It didn't erase what she lost, but it overshadowed it. But when Mary started her life with Roland, life force moved her along, right? She had children, she had interests. And so she put the past a bit in the background, a bit. She never lost it, she made us aware of it, but the life force carried her forward. Later in life, when there was less to look forward to, the pain returned. And we saw that, and her caregivers saw that over the last year and so. It was mostly, she expressed incredible gratitude for what she had, but she also expressed the pain of having lost her father for the year, having lost her sister, having lost her country. And so she was one of contradictions. So Mary could see the big picture, but she was also highly opinionated. Mary was incredibly strong, but had an innate insecurity as well that came along for what she had lost. She was not highly educated, and she mentioned that, and I always said, Mom, you were not highly educated formally, but you were incredibly well-read and very bright. So she was not well-educated, but very, very well-read. And so, a woman of contradictions, of great love, what she lost and what she gained. Anyway, Mom would probably bridle at the words I'm going to say, but Mom, Godspeed. Thank you.
Wow, those are hard acts to follow. So we're here to celebrate my mother's life. It's hard to honor an entire life in just a few minutes, but I'm going to give it a shot. Mary was a woman of resilience, intelligence, and deep conviction. She lived almost 96 years, a long life full of moments of joy and struggle. The turbulent period of her escape from Nazi Germany in 1939 and the subsequent death of her dear oldest sister, Lily, stayed with her for the rest of her life. It shaped her deeply, something she reflected on often in the last few months of her life. She met my father at the age of 16, and they married when she was just 19. It was her only serious relationship. Their bond was unwavering, and when he died in 2004, she never fully recovered from that loss. Before his death, he gave her a necklace with 2 Canada geese, a symbol of mating for life. She cherished it, and wore it even in her waning days. It is only fitting that she is wearing it today. When it came to her kids, she was highly devoted. No matter what challenges she faced personally, she was always there for me in very, very difficult times. There was never any doubt about her love, and that she would be there when I needed her. She kept her sense of humor throughout her life. Whenever I say goodbye to her in the past few years, she would always ask, "Are you going to keep me?" To which I always reply, "Nope, I'm putting her up for adoption, but no takers yet." That always got a chuckle. It was a running joke, and I will miss it as I will miss her. One of the most enduring parts of my mother's legacy is the bond that she preserved with her family in Germany for 85 years after her exodus. Despite the passage of time and the miles between them, she remained deeply connected to her dear cousin Gizi, who we spoke with just yesterday. That connection meant everything to her, and because of it, our family has continued to stay close. To this day, we share strong ties with Gizi, her kids, and her grandchildren, a testament to my mother's fierce dedication to family. In honor of that legacy, we are planning a roots trip to Łódź or Lutz, depending on whether you're saying it in Polish or German, her mother's hometown in Poland, with our German and Australian cousins for next year. But I don't want to entirely sugarcoat Mary Harrison, and she would not want me to do that. She could be alienating, sharp, and difficult to be with. In some ways, this isolated her. I'm seeing some body language in the crowd there, calling out Sarah back there. In some ways, this isolated from some family and friends. Despite her sharp edges, she was also fiercely loyal, deeply principled, and full of love for her kids, grandkids, and great-grandchildren. That same strength made her, and conviction made her remarkably effective at working with troubled kids and even some troubled adults. She maintained deep and lasting relationships with many. A true measure of the woman can be reflected in the outpouring of intense love over the past few weeks, the way she impacted the lives of many, and how family and friends portrayed her and their relationships with her. So I'm going to cite a few things that we heard about her as she was dying. Inquisitive, great sense of humor, made me laugh, exuberant, hilarious, remarkable, very strong human being, huge impact on my life. And that was not just one person. Like a mother to me, a special lady, such a big personality, yep. A character who kept you on your toes, a spark. As a kid, she used to engage me in a way that few adults ever did. Clever, witty, enthusiastic, engaging, and kind, and my favorite, feisty. That indeed she was. As a mother, she passed on her strength, her determination, and her sense of duty. She was intelligent, perceptive, inquisitive, and never afraid to speak her mind, to say the least. One of our mother's biggest wishes was to always stay in her house, something we worked very hard to do. We could not have done it with her very special and dedicated and loving caregivers, Pat, Lucy, Darlene, Dee, and Shayla. We are deeply grateful to them. Our mother's life was not easy, nor was she, but she was remarkable. She survived, she endured, and she loved, and she was deeply loved. And for that, we honor her today.
Okay. My grandmother asked me to speak today, and she told me to say how great her life was. And if you knew Mary, it was not a request, it was an instruction. So I find it hard to find the right words to describe my grandmother, mostly because she was really full of words herself. Getting a word in edgewise with her was no small feat. She called me a lot. Maybe I didn't always answer as much as I should have. And maybe I got frustrated after the 10th call in a row, each with a minimum of 30 minutes. This was obviously many years ago. But now I miss her ability to terrorize my phone. I don't know Pittsburgh without Mary, and my favorite Pittsburgh is with Mary. That's what my kids said to me in the car the other day. And I couldn't have said it better myself. She was a great grandmother, and she was certainly great. She was my biggest cheerleader, as many of you probably know. She believed in me and bragged about me to anyone who would listen. She cheered on our parenting style, adored my kids, and gave me a special kind of love that is really hard to put into words. We took quite a few trips together. They weren't always easy trips. There was, for example, the time she kicked me out of the car on the highway. And when she decided that the silent treatment was the best way to express herself. But somehow I kept on signing up for more. Because the truth is, the shared experience of traveling with Mary was something special. We took a lot of tours. We visited the Moulin Rouge. We even smoked a hookah with random men in a Turkish bazaar. We ate amazing food together, and we walked so far. She actually told me it was a death march, um, to find the Jewish quarter in Paris to buy my menorah. One time in an airport on our way to Turkey, we filled water bottles with wine so that we could drink it on the airplane. She was pretty cool and tech savvy enough to use FaceTime and WhatsApp and to send me pictures, and was always up for long conversations while I was biking around Heidelberg. She came to see my daughter, Annie, just a few weeks after she was born with my cousin Rachel, while I was attending a medical school class. She took the train from Hamburg to Heidelberg to visit my husband and me regularly, and we would roam the city together. She believed in living in the moment, as she always said, so much that she would give gifts early just to enjoy watching people opening them and using them right away. She was generous and thoughtful, and as my husband puts it, a true Hamburg dame, with a certain presence in everything she did. She always told me she wanted me to take her for granted. Sometimes she said it begrudgingly when she didn't think that I was giving her enough attention. But I never really understood what she meant, but I do now. She had an uncanny ability to understand children, their emotions, and their needs. There were times she made comments that really frustrated me and actually confused and upset me about my children, only for me to realize years later that she was actually really right. Um, she had, yeah, both she and my late grandfather were the king and queen of table manners. She had a notorious sweet tooth and never showed up without bringing us surprise eggs from Germany. She was never shy about sticking up her middle finger or calling someone a little fuck. She was a loving grandmother, and we will all miss her. Mary, you were one of a kind, and we love you.
We have two more speakers. Pat Hickman. Where's Pat? And then thereafter, David Brown.
Yeah, I'm short. Wow. I'm used to being in the background. I really don't like being in front. I'm a little shy. But everything that was said was so awesome about her because that's who she was. But all I can do is tell you who I knew. I didn't write anything down. I have had so much stuff going through my head. And all I can say is from the very first day we met, there was just something about her, like she said, there was something about me. And one of the things I would say to her, I said, yes, ma'am. She said, oh, no, you do not say yes, ma'am to me. And I'm like, okay, but I was taught to respect my elders. So all the other girls, they called her Mary. I called her honey, sweetie. I never called her Mary. Even when I wrote things down, I wrote Miss Mary, because she was Miss Mary to me. She was very special to me, and she always will be. We talked about a lot of things. We had a lot in common, and I think that's why we really got along so well. And it was just from the beginning, because I found out from the family that she didn't want anybody there. She was very independent, and she was very independent to the end. We would go to the doctors, or she'd go get her hair done and her nails. Mary Harrison. They know you're here. They know you're here. She let them know she was there. She loved each and every one of you. Each and every one of you. And we talked about how special we were and how lucky we were to have great children. She said, I have great children, don't I? I said, yes, you do. She said, you do also. And she said, you raised them well. This lady taught me a lot. I learned a lot from her. I could see the travel in the home. And if I said something, she corrected my English. She said, you don't mind, do you? Not at all. And one of the things she said, now don't take this the wrong way, but you need to lose a little weight. And I knew she was right. So in her honor, I'm going to work real hard to do that. It was coming off slowly. Now I can work a little harder. I'm trying to keep it together because I don't want her to. She's promised to do something if we stood up here and cried. But I love your mother, your grandmother, the great grandmother. She was special in my life because we respect one another and we became very good friends. And I just thank each and every one of you because from the day that I met you, every last one of you have always been the same. And I thank you for embracing me in your family through your mother. I thank you for your friendship. I thank you for your love. And she adopted me whether you know it or not. So I'm just letting you know you can't get rid of me. And just continue to love one another. That's all she wanted. Just continue to love one another. And I know you will. Thank you.
Thank you.
So my name is David Brown, and I live in Aspinwall, and I live in the same town that Mary Harrison has long lived in, although she lives in Upper Aspinwall and I in Lower Aspinwall, so we weren't near neighbors. And when I look back on my life for the last 15 years, if you had told me 15 years ago that in my early 50s, I would soon acquire one of my closest friends in life, and she would happen to be an elderly Jewish woman who had fled Germany in the 1930s, I would never have believed it. And it was one of these serendipitous chance occurrences. I live in Lower Aspinwall, and Mary had her hairdresser lived across the street from my house. And I happened to be outside one day, and I saw a car that had what's called a D-Shield, a D sticker, which stands for Germany, Deutschland, on the car. And I happened to be staring at it when she came out of the hairdresser's, and I asked her, "Is this your car?" and noted that she had a German connection, and I have a German connection as well. My mother's parents immigrated from Germany after the First World War, and I can speak a little German, and I have a deep interest in German culture and history, and so we kind of hit it off. And then I don't really know what happened after that, because for some strange reason we started having lunch together every other month, and we just get together and talk for several hours. And we would take over Sam's Tavern in the Wall and sit at a bench for several hours and be thrown out at 5 o'clock when the dinner hour was coming on. And then we intensified our meetings during COVID, because during COVID she was pretty shut in, and so we started meeting monthly, and we did that ever since. But to talk with somebody like Mary was in many ways a lesson in the histories of the West in the 20th century. She was born in 1929, lived through the terrible times of the Nazi regime in Germany, managed to escape the atrocities that were committed during the war and beforehand, and then came and made a new life with herself in the United States. But you could learn so much about what the generation and the generation and a half in life had experienced that I did not personally experience from talking with her. So she was basically a kind of a walking history text, if you will. I have to, the rabbi mentioned this, but it's important to note that her maiden name was Abrahamson, which is on her father's gravestone in the cemetery which we'll be visiting. And she always considered herself Abrahamson, even though it was shortened and anglicized to Amson. And I respect that and honor that and regret that that happened to her. And then she became Harrison when she married Roland in the late 1940s, I guess. But so we became very close friends over the following years, and we always would talk about Germany and stuff. And she would current events. She was always asking me, "What do you think is going to happen?" And I would say, "Mary, I have no clue what's going to happen. Almost every pundit that tries to predict what's going to happen is wrong. So I'm not going to attempt predictions." But she would always want to know what I thought was going to happen. It kind of drove me nuts. And we would meet for 3 or 4 hours, and she usually would threaten to throw me out of the house at one point or another because I said something that was offensive or God knows what. And but we got along very, very well, and we always had a great time together. And she was a real blessing in my life. And I can only tell you, when you're lucky enough to meet somebody like her, who you can develop a deep friendship with, and it's an incredible privilege to have people like that in your life. If I had to summarize who Mary really was, she was deeply devoted to people across the board. I mean, she was incredibly egalitarian. She didn't care what you looked like. She didn't care what your religion was. She just cared about how you behaved and how you led your life. And she was a great role model for the people who had her in their lives. And I consider all of her members of the family, though I'm sure there were issues, to have been lucky to have such an outstanding role model for how to live your life. If you studied Mary Harrison, you'd have a good mini lecture on how to go about living a good life, a good and meaningful life. So I consider it a deep privilege to have had her in my life. I will miss her for the rest of my life, and she's had an incredible impact on me in terms of our shared interests and in all the conversations and the times we spent together enjoying each other's company. And I just wanted to tell you, in terms of those of you who remember Mary, I just wanted to share with you two epitaphs, one that I read in the cemetery many years ago that I think is the kind of thing I hope is said after me when I'm gone. But I can say this about Mary. So it goes like this: to live in the hearts we leave behind is not to die. And I would also ask that her memory being a blessing to us all, as it will be to me. Thank you.
Thank you. We thank each of you. Mary's final words were spoken with clarity and conviction. As Lee recalls, she said simply, "I love you all." Those were her parting words, and they are her blessing, and they are her legacy. And now, as we say goodbye, we turn to words Mary cherished, words from Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. In a favorite passage, the poet writes, "When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight." And also, what is it to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun? And what is it to cease breathing but to free the breath from its restless tides, that it may rise and expand and seek God unencumbered? Though the pain we experience this day is for each of us uniquely our own, the experience of loss and grief are not foreign to anyone who has lived long enough. Loss and grief are not foreign to anyone who has opened their heart to love. And so it is that Jewish tradition, in a time of grief such as ours, calls out for us with a voice that reaffirms that in spite of our anguish and abiding within our tears of sorrow, dwells yet the possibility for journeying once more towards hope and renewal, towards purpose and peace. Let us each take this opportunity to reflect silently, perchance to pray, each in his own words and each in her own way, each with our own treasured memories of times we were privileged to share with Mary Harrison. And we consecrate this moment to her memory together now. O source of life and peace. Bless, we pray, all the memories we cherish. On this day when our grief is greatest and in the days to come, as we slowly return to the normal patterns of our lives, we pray the sorrows we know be softened and the pain of our bereavement might grow more gentle. Indeed, we pray that our grief and our pain be transformed into gratitude and tenderness, generosity and goodness, and that peace descend upon all who mourn today, and that comfort come speedily to all who are bereaved. And we say together, Amen. Following the conclusion of our service, interment will take place at Westview Cemetery, at which time Kaddish will be recited in Mary's memory for the first time graveside. Following burial, all are invited to return here to Rodef Shalom to gather with members of Mary's family for a meal of consolation and to continue the conversation we have begun. That is as of 1:30 p.m. today. Please know Mary Harrison's name will also be included for the recitation of Kaddish at all Shabbat services, Friday evenings and Saturday mornings at both Temple Ohav Shalom as well as Rodef Shalom for the coming 4 weeks. Please think to join us at either location. I invite you now, as you may be able, to please rise for our memorial prayer, the El Male Rachamim. El Male Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamitzei Merchod, Nechonat Achat Kanfei HaShechina, Im Kedoshim Utehorim Kezoharakia Mazhirim et Nishmat HaIsha Hazot, Shehalachal Olama. Baal HaRachamim Yastireha, Beseter Kanfanav Olamim, Bitzur HaChaim et Nishmata. Adonai hu nachalata v'tanuach b'shalom mishkava v'nomar. Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit within the universe, grant perfect rest, we pray, in your sheltering presence to Mary Abramson, Harrison, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, may she find refuge in your eternal presence. May her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is now her inheritance. May she rest in peace. And we say once more, Amen. Shoulder to shoulder, 2 by 2.
Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that will be accompanying us to the cemetery, you may step to the car for just a few moments. When you do return to your car, please turn your high beams